Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're joining me today. We're going to take a super familiar holiday classic, O. Henry's 1905 story, The Gift of the Magi, and, well, we're going to completely flip it on its head. You know the one, right? But today, we're peeling back the layers of what is usually presented as this perfectly wholesome, feel-good holiday artifact. We're diving deep into the historical data, the psychological mechanisms, and the sociological frameworks baked right into the text itself. So buckle up, because this is a really fascinating ride. Let's just jump right in with a pretty heavy question. Is the ultimate Christmas story actually a tragedy of industrial capitalism? I want you to completely reevaluate what you think you know about this famous tale. Look, we usually remember it as this sweet, kind of tragic but cute story about a young couple giving up their prized possessions to buy each other Christmas gifts. But if we actually look at the socioeconomic framework of the progressive era when it was written, we uncover a much, much harsher reality. We're all used to picturing this cozy holiday cliche of selfless love and gift-giving, right? That's the version we've all been sold. But we really need to contrast that idealized consumerism with the brutal, grounded reality O. Henry was actually writing about. I mean, we are looking at the tail end of the Industrial Revolution in New York City. Jim and Della, they are urban laborers fighting against massive income stagnation and rapid inflation. They're basically trapped in an $8 a week furnished flat, living on the absolute edge of financial ruin. Section 1. The Progressive Era Reality, Scarcity and Anxiety. To truly get this era, you have to recognize that the early 20th century marked the sudden rise of mass-market, commercialized Christmas traditions. Out of nowhere, a person's social value became tied directly to their material purchasing power. Giving a gift wasn't just, a nice gesture anymore. It became this high-stakes test of devotion and social status. And smack in the middle of all that immense pressure, we have exactly $1.87. Just $1.87. That is literally all Della has managed to save for Christmas. This tiny, agonizingly small sum illustrates her extreme economic vulnerability. And why are they in this mess? Because Jim recently suffered a totally devastating salary reduction. His pay was slashed from $30 a week down to just $20. Now that isn't just a tight budget, that is a full-blown economic crisis for this young family. So how did Della even save that $1.87? By, as the text says, bulldozing grocers penny by penny. And listen, this isn't casual couponing or looking for a 2-for-1 deal. This is what sociologists call a scarcity mindset. Chronic poverty completely consumes a person's mental bandwidth. Daily survival becomes an absolute chore, turning everyday, mundane interactions, like just buying food, into a series of exhausting, frankly humiliating confrontations, all just to save a single penny. It turns out continuous financial deprivation strictly restricts your cognitive focus down to immediate survival. There's this intense anticipatory anxiety caused by this kind of deprivation. Think about Della obsessively counting her money over and over again. It reveals how progressive-era poverty actually imposes a harsh moral judgment on the working class and ultimately deeply degrades human dignity. When your brain is 100% focused on where the very next penny is coming from, well, there's just no room for anything else. Section 2. Flush for cash, capitalist commodification. Now, when we look at the famous transaction at Madame Sofroni's shop, the part where Della actually sells her hair, a brutal cognitive dissonance really emerges. We see this warm, intimate domestic affection slamming headfirst into cold, hard industrial capitalism. Madame Sofroni, she doesn't see Della as a person. She assesses Della's hair with this detached, almost surgical commercial precision. In an instant, a crown of personal heritage is converted into a $20 commodity. The capitalist market literally, ruthlessly reduces human anatomy and personal identity into transactional raw materials. Just so these characters can participate in society's holiday rituals, their most intimate identity markers absolutely must be monetized to survive. It's truly a startling realization when you think about it. Section 3. The gendered armor, stripping identity. The psychological toll of these sacrifices is so deeply tied to the incredibly rigid gender roles and heavy burdens of 1905 New York society. Losing these objects meant losing a piece of who you were actually expected to be. For men, they internalized provider failure as this deep, personal shame. We see this symbolized by Jim's threadbare coat and his inability to keep his family watch. Not being able to afford a new coat basically signifies his failure as a husband in that society's eyes. On the flip side, Della experiences absolute sheer panic after her haircut. She's terrified Jim will view her as a Coney Island chorus girl. This really proves just how heavily female security and self-worth were tied to traditional aesthetic standards and, of course, male approval. These material possessions aren't just things. They act as vital psychological extensions of the self.
So when we tie all these psychological and sociocultural dimensions together, we arrive at what we can call identity demolition. By pawning the family watch and chopping off her hair, Jim and Della aren't just exchanging goods, they are stripping away their primary status symbols, their external social armor, if you will. They are completely demolishing their societal identities in order to protect and prioritize their relational bonding. It's a massive, massive psychological sacrifice.
Section 4. Subverting Social Exchange Theory.
Okay, so here's where we analyze how O. Henry's narrative actually executes a radical, honestly brilliant subversion of classic economic models. He sets up this capitalist trap and then literally has his characters break all the rules. Have you ever heard of social exchange theory? It's a classical economic and sociological model positing that individuals aim to maximize rewards and minimize personal costs. It's basically the baseline expectation of how humans operate in a market society. We are wired to try and gain the absolute most material benefit for the absolute least amount of personal cost. It's simple cost-benefit analysis, right? But O. Henry completely subverts this. Instead of maximizing personal rewards and minimizing costs, the story ends with both characters intentionally undermining this entire theory. Jim and Della purposefully render their material gifts totally, completely useless. Jim sells his watch to buy combs for Della's hair, and Della sells her hair to buy a chain for Jim's watch. It's crazy. They achieve peak psychological fulfillment through complete and total economic loss. And honestly, this is what you should really take away from this explainer in this explainer. In this story, value is redefined from monetary worth to radical mutual altruism. The couple's actions represent a complete, defiant rejection of the transactional nature of their capitalist society. They opt instead for pure, unfiltered emotional devotion. Sure, they lose all their material wealth and their social armor, but they win on a deeply, fundamentally human level. I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to ponder. Why does the narrative position economic foolishness as ultimate emotional wisdom? Think about the paradox of sacrifice here. In a world obsessed with maximizing returns, doing the most economically foolish thing possible somehow becomes the wisest emotional choice. I highly encourage you to reflect on how material goods, the constant pressure of commercialization, and the anxiety of scarcity impact your own identity today. Thank you so much for exploring these layers with me today on The Explainer.